The year is 2027. Global powers are locked in a tense standoff. Military buildups have become the norm. From the South China Sea to Eastern Europe, tensions are at a fever pitch. The world holds its breath, hoping for diplomacy to prevail. But whispers of war begin to drown out the pleas for peace. The United States, once the undisputed global superpower, finds itself at a crossroads. Years of internal strife and political division have taken their toll. China and Russia see a chance to assert dominance, but they underestimate the resolve of the American people. When threatened, the United States has always shown its resilience. The enemies of freedom are about to learn this lesson the hard way. Intelligence agencies around the world are working overtime. Encrypted messages are intercepted and analyzed. Diplomatic efforts have stalled. The whispers of war are growing louder. The fate of humanity hangs in the balance. The uneasy peace shatters. Without warning, a coordinated attack strikes the United States. Cyber attacks cripple critical infrastructure. Power grids collapse. Communication networks fall silent. This is a full-scale invasion, meticulously planned. China and Russia have joined forces in a deadly alliance. The invasion unfolds on multiple fronts. From the Arctic to California, enemy forces converge on U.S. soil. The Chinese Navy launches a massive amphibious assault on the West Coast. San Diego, Los Angeles, San Francisco, all in the crosshairs. Russian forces surge across the Bering Strait, targeting Alaska. The Arctic terrain becomes a battleground. The speed and ferocity of the Russian advance take many by surprise. Their objective to cripple the United States by severing its vital supply chains. Canadian defenses crumble under the weight of the Russian onslaught. The northern border becomes a line drawn in blood and steel. News reports paint a grim picture of collapsing defenses. The world watches in horror. Within the United States, the initial shock gives way to fear, anger, and disbelief. The country, already deeply divided, struggles to come to terms with the crisis. The government urges calm, but their words ring hollow. The president, visibly shaken, vows swift retaliation. But the damage has been done. The enemy is already within the gates. A different kind of battle rages in the digital realm. Chinese and Russian hackers unleash a digital blitzkrieg. Critical infrastructure systems crumble. Power grids collapse, financial markets seize up, communication networks fall silent. The government struggles to maintain order. As night falls, the true extent of the cyber attack becomes clear. Major cities are transformed into eerie ghost towns. Hospitals struggle to function without power or communication. Families huddle together in fear and uncertainty. The glow of televisions and computers are now dark. The nation is plunged into darkness. Deep within the Pentagon, a different kind of battle rages. Elite teams of American hackers fight back against the digital onslaught. Every keystroke, every line of code, could mean the difference between order and chaos. These digital soldiers know the fate of the nation rests in their hands. But the enemy is formidable. The battle for cyberspace is fierce. A glimmer of hope emerges from an unexpected source. Civilian hackers across the globe join the fight. Motivated by patriotism or a love of the challenge, they contribute their skills. Every line of code cracked, every system restored, helps turn the tide. They are a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to surrender. Hope can be found in the most unexpected places. The digital onslaught is a prelude to a more terrifying show of force. Chinese and Russian nuclear arsenals are unleashed with terrifying precision. Major naval bases are reduced to smoldering ruins. The initial attack is merely the opening salvo. Military installations and strategic infrastructure are systematically targeted. The United States finds itself reeling under the onslaught. Civilian population centers are not spared. New York City is struck with terrifying force. The iconic skyline is forever scarred. Washington, D.C., the seat of American power, is also targeted. The attacks are calculated moves to break the will of the American people. Chaos and despair spread across the nation. The United States descends into chaos. Cities are transformed into desolate wastelands. Hospitals are inundated with the wounded and dying. Communication networks are all but non-existent. Families are torn apart, desperate for news of loved ones. The nation is in turmoil. The true extent of the devastation becomes clear. The United States lies in ruins, its spirit seemingly broken. The death toll is staggering. The economic cost is incalculable. The nation mourns its dead. The American dream now seems like a distant memory. The missile strikes were just the beginning. A new horror unfolded on American shores. Chinese soldiers in armor poured onto American soil. Beaches became battlefields. Coastal towns and cities were quickly overrun. The enemy's objective was clear: to claim America as their own. As Chinese forces swept across the west, Russian troops emerged from the north. They bypassed major cities, targeting key infrastructure. The National Guard fought bravely but were outmatched. Towns and villages became ghost towns. The heartland of America was now a war zone. The enemy cast a long shadow over the land. The United States found itself on the brink of collapse. The dream of American exceptionalism lay shattered. The president addressed the nation from a secure bunker. He spoke of resilience, but his voice betrayed doubt. The world watched as the United States teetered on the edge. Was this the end of an era? Amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged. Ordinary citizens formed ragtag militias to defend their homes. Stories of extraordinary courage and sacrifice surfaced. Firefighters risked their lives to save others. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly in makeshift hospitals. These acts of defiance represented a refusal to surrender. As the United States reeled from the initial invasion, a wave of shock and disbelief swept across the globe. The world watched in horror as a nation that had long stood as a symbol of strength and freedom was brought to its knees. In capitals across Europe, emergency meetings were convened. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization faced its greatest test yet. For some, the answer was simple. The United States had been a loyal ally, and now it was their turn to stand with America in its hour of need. After days of agonizing debate and deliberation, a decision was reached. NATO, in a historic vote, agreed to invoke Article 5 of its founding treaty, declaring that an attack on one member was an attack on all. The alliance, dormant for so long, had awakened. From across the Atlantic, a multinational force assembled, a testament to the enduring bonds of friendship and shared values. British warships, their decks bristling with advanced weaponry, set sail for the North American coast. French fighter jets, their engines screaming defiance, soared into the skies, ready to engage the enemy. The message was clear. The world stood with the United States. The forces of aggression, emboldened by their early victories, would soon learn that they had awakened a sleeping giant, and the world would stand united against them. The arrival of NATO reinforcements was a much-needed morale boost for the beleaguered American forces. The enemy, deeply entrenched and well-supplied, fought with surprising ferocity. In the skies above the oceans, a different kind of battle raged. NATO jets engaged in deadly dogfights with Chinese and Russian aircraft. On the ground, the fighting was just as intense. American and NATO troops fought with tenacity and belief in their cause. Despite the heavy fighting and the constant threat of enemy counterattacks, the arrival of NATO forces had a profound impact on the war. The tide, slowly but surely, began to turn. American forces, bolstered by the knowledge that they were no longer fighting alone, fought with renewed vigor and determination. The enemy, sensing that the momentum was shifting, grew more desperate. Their attacks, once characterized by precision and coordination, became more erratic, more indiscriminate. civilian casualties mounted, fueling international outrage and strengthening the resolve of the Allied forces. The world watched, with a mixture of hope and trepidation, as the United States and its allies fought to reclaim their lost ground. The outcome of the war was still uncertain, but one thing was clear: the spirit of freedom and democracy, once on the brink of extinction, was burning brighter than ever. The United States, though bloodied and bruised, was far from defeated. The nation was about to unleash its full industrial and technological might. Factories roared back to life, churning out the tools of war. Tanks rolled off the assembly lines, ready to reclaim their nation's soil. Fighter jets took to the skies, eager to avenge their fallen comrades. The sleeping giant had awakened, and its roar would soon be heard across the globe. On the front lines, a new sense of purpose hardened the gazes of American soldiers. The initial shock of the invasion had worn off, replaced by a burning desire to reclaim their country, and they now had the tools to do it. The skies became a maelstrom of steel and fire as American fighter jets engaged the enemy. Infantry units, utilizing advanced tactics, pushed the enemy back from their entrenched positions. The digital battlefield, once a place of vulnerability for the United States, was now becoming a proving ground for American ingenuity. The nation's top programmers and hackers, working tirelessly in the digital trenches, had developed sophisticated countermeasures, turning the enemy's tactics against them. Viruses, meticulously crafted to exploit vulnerabilities in enemy systems, spread through their networks like wildfire, disrupting communications, scrambling intelligence, and sowing chaos. Drones, controlled by skilled operators thousands of miles away, rained down precision strikes on enemy command centers and supply lines, disrupting their ability to wage war. The digital counteroffensive wasn't just about defense, it was about turning the tables, about taking the fight to the enemy in a domain they thought they controlled. And as the digital tide began to turn, so too did the momentum of the war itself. The United States, leveraging its global reach and unparalleled intelligence network, began to exploit weaknesses in the enemy's seemingly impenetrable armor. Surgical strikes, planned and executed with surgical precision, targeted key leaders and infrastructure, disrupting the enemy's ability to coordinate their forces. Special forces teams, masters of stealth and unconventional warfare, infiltrated deep behind enemy lines, disrupting supply lines, sabotaging equipment, and sowing discord among the ranks. Their actions, often unseen and unheard, had a disproportionate impact on the enemy's morale, chipping away at their confidence and their will to fight. The tide of the war was turning, slowly but surely. The United States, once on the brink of defeat, was showing the world what it meant to be a resilient nation, a nation forged in the fires of adversity, a nation that refused to surrender. The tide had turned. What began as a desperate struggle for survival had transformed into a relentless march towards victory. The United States, fueled by the unyielding spirit of its people and the unwavering support of its allies, had emerged stronger. The invaders, once seemingly invincible, now found themselves on the defensive. Their supply lines began to crumble. Their morale plummeted. Victory, however, came at a heavy price. The war had left an indelible scar on the American psyche, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace and the ever-present threat to freedom. Cities lay in ruins, their once familiar skylines now jagged and scarred. Millions mourned the loss of loved ones, their grief etched into the fabric of the nation. The economic cost of the war was staggering. Industries lay in ruins, their factories silent, their workers displaced. The national debt soared to unimaginable heights, a burden that would be borne by generations to come. Yet amidst the ruins and the grief, there was also a sense of resilience, a determination to rebuild, to honor the sacrifices of those who had given their lives for their country. The American spirit, tested in the fires of adversity, had emerged tempered and unyielding. In the aftermath of the war, the world looked to the United States with a mixture of awe and apprehension. The nation had emerged as the undisputed global superpower. The enemies of freedom had been vanquished. The United States, bearing the scars of war, emerged with a profound understanding of the costs of freedom. A new dawn had broken, but the shadows of the past lingered. The invasion of the United States had been a brutal test, a crucible from which the nation emerged, scarred but unbroken. The enemy had underestimated the spirit of the American people, their willingness to fight for their ideals, their unity in the face of overwhelming odds. The world had learned a valuable lesson, that freedom is not free, that it must be constantly defended against those who would seek to extinguish its flame, and that the United States, though imperfect, remained a beacon of hope, a defender of liberty, and a force for good in the world. The scars of war would remain, a solemn reminder of the sacrifices made and the price of peace. But the spirit of America, that indomitable will to overcome adversity, would continue to inspire generations to come.